You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, fellow patriots. Get ready for an hour of unabashedly pro-American, pro-conservative, and pro-biblical principles. This is the Blake Johnson Program.
Hello, America. Welcome to it. This is the Blake Johnson Program. So happy you've decided to join us today. Join the show and listen in. You've had a great weekend and a great day so far. So we are settling in for the night. Get yourself cozy and relax with Blake. I can't think of a sexier way to spend the rest of your evening with me. But no, I do hope you've enjoyed yourself. Hope you've had a chance to get out and spend time with family or just get some, chores done, maybe some yard work done, depending on where you live. But alas, we are here once again to go over what's been going on in the world today. We need to start with something that's really important, something that's still developing, at least at the time of this recording, and that is the Waffle House massacre that took place in Tennessee early yesterday morning. Very, very sad story. 4 people were murdered by a 29-year-old. I won't give his name, but he's from Illinois. Lived in an apartment complex near the Waffle House restaurant. Opened fire in the restaurant. He was reportedly naked, too, while he was opening fire on innocent people. And there's not yet been a motive released for this. What we know is around 3:23 in the morning, Central Time in Antioch, a town south of Nashville, the killer used this is what they're saying, a quote, assault-style weapon, according to police. The killer exited his vehicle where he immediately murdered 2 people outside the Waffle House. He then entered the Waffle House and continued to fire where he murdered 2 more people and wounded numerous others. Now, the shooting itself ceased only because a hero stepped in and tackled him. I'll get into him, talk about him in just a moment. But he was able to escape the scene. He is still on the run, and at the time of this show that I'm recording this, he has not yet been captured. So hopefully he will be captured very soon. But rightly so, many people are talking about this hero who stepped in to save lives, and he saved many lives. A man by the name of James Shaw Jr., 29 years old. He was at the Waffle House. He was only there for a couple minutes before this gunman opened fire. And there's a picture of him on Twitter that's been going around, posted by a Eugene Gu, a doctor there. And I guess he took I'm assuming this is one of the doctors that was actually at this hospital where this man was being treated. But he was with a group of friends at the restaurant. They had just left a fraternity party. And when the killer opened fire in the Waffle House, this man Shaw hid in the bathroom and watched the killer's movements. He said, quote, "I remember I was like, dang, I'm basically in a barrel. There's no place for me to go." But once the killer stopped firing to reload, Shaw knew that he had to act. So he engaged the killer with his bare hands and wrestled him to the ground, where he was able to strip the firearm from the killer and throw it behind the bar. Shaw then says, when he came in, I distinctively remember thinking that he's going to have to work for this kill. I had a chance to stop him, and thankfully I stopped him. I grabbed the gun and kept it down. He had one hand on it. I pulled it away and threw it over the bar. The confrontation forced the killer outside where he walked away. Shaw said he didn't follow the man over fears he had another gun. Shaw then flagged down drivers to phone 911. And then he says, after being celebrated as a hero, he says, I don't really know. When everyone said that of being a hero, it feels selfish. I was just trying to get myself out. I saw the opportunity and pretty much took it. While I was in hospital, a girl that was there said you saved my life. I didn't do it to be a hero. However, police said that there is no doubt he saved many lives. Now, he only suffered a minor injury to his elbow, so he's doing just fine, considering the circumstances. So, he saved a lot of lives, and we should definitely be congratulating him for that. Now, unfortunately, as is the case with every freaking tragedy, every freaking thing that takes place in our country, whether it be a shooting, whether it be somebody dying, just maybe it's of natural causes or a disease, or maybe it's someone who gets fired or is shamed, or just any news story, people immediately, without knowing any or all of the facts, will jump on this story and will make it about their political agenda, which is what happened within hours of, well, maybe not even hours, within minutes of this story going on social media. And, oh, you want to guess who one of the more prominent voices now was that jumped on this story and made it about her own political agenda? I'll give you a hint. A school shooting survivor. Oh, that's right. That's right. Emma Gonzalez from the Parkland school shooting, a survivor there, jumped all over this story. She is now calling for a complete and total confiscation of every single semi-automatic weapon. Not even kidding. She goes on Twitter, and she thinks so highly of herself, which seems to be the case of many of these survivors that are being praised by the left-wing media. People like David Hogg, Cameron Kasky, Emma Gonzalez, and I think one or two other people that are at the forefront of this conversation about gun control. And she goes into a Twitter rant. I won't read to you all of the tweets. You can go see it for yourself if you really want to. But this is one of the two of the tweets here are the highlights I wanted to share with you. She says, removing the assault and semi-automatic weapons from our civilian society, instituting thorough background checks and mandatory waiting periods, and raising the buy-in age and banning the production of high-capacity magazines are the ways to stop shootings in America. Okay. And then, the best part. The FBI defines a mass shooting as 4 people killed, not including the shooter. Mass shootings occur in churches, in schools, at concerts, and Waffle Houses, just about anywhere, except in other countries. So, no shootings happen in any other country. None whatsoever. Oh, okay. I think that's a lie. I'm pretty darn sure that's a lie. In fact, I know it's a lie. And I have evidence, mountains of evidence to back that up. You remember the Texas church shooting in which an armed civilian used his, I believe it was an AR-15, to stop the mass murder of 26 Texas churchgoers. And he's Stephen Williford. He's an former NRA instructor who lived next door to the church. Took his AR-15 after hearing gunfire, went over, shot the shooter in the leg, forced him to drop his weapon, in which he also fled the scene. So that happened recently. And you're seeing people like, the reason I bring that up is because David Hogg, he also jumped on this too and said that, because he was talking about this James Shaw guy that I just mentioned who stepped in and took down the shooter in the Waffle House and saying, see, you don't always need a good guy with a gun to stop a shooting. Well, he didn't say always. He said you don't need a good guy with a gun to stop a shooting. I was like, really? Interesting. Maybe you should tell that to the 4 people who were murdered by that shooter in the Waffle House. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a gun might have helped. But they don't want to talk about that because it doesn't fit their agenda. Facts do not fit their agenda. But continuing on. There's a couple examples of this, and I just want to go over these just really quick. And, I mean, you obviously know that what they're saying isn't true, but, you know, might as well, right? 1997, the assistant principal of the Mississippi Pearl High School, Joel Myrick, used the .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol he kept in his truck to detain 16-year-old Luke Woodham after the teenager stabbed and bludgeoned to death his mother at a home and killed 2 students and injured 7 at the high school. A decade later, in 2007, Matthew Murray killed 4 people at Colorado Springs Church before being shot by church member and volunteer security guard Gene Assam. April of 2016, an Uber driver with a concealed carry permit shot and wounded a gunman who opened fire on a crowd of people in Chicago's Logan Square. September of last year, I believe, an usher at a Tennessee church used his personal firearm to subdue a masked gunman who had already killed 1 woman in the church's parking lot and injured 6 others inside. But strangely enough, you are not going to hear about those things at CNN. You are not going to hear about those things on MSNBC or NBC or any of these liberal outlets that just love to talk about gun control and love to talk about how evil those darn guns are and those evil NRA members and that evil organization that just loves to just kill people. And they, you know, those politicians that take their blood money, how evil they are. They love to talk about that, but they won't ever talk about these stories in which responsible gun-owning Americans, law-abiding Americans, which, by the way, consist of the vast majority of gun owners who, you know, have gone through the legal process to get a firearm, but obviously not talking about the gangs that go about it illegally. The legal people, the ones who are actually concerned about the law, they strangely don't go around mass murdering people. I mean, it was like that guy we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Mark Robinson, I believe that's his name, in which he stood up in front of a council meeting, city council meeting, and said, you know, here's what's going to happen. You take away the guns of law-abiding citizens. They turn in their weapons. Who's not going to turn in their weapons? The criminals. The gang members, because they don't follow the law anyway. And you know this, and I know this, and it's just more and more nonsense every day. But I have to say, in a way, Gonzalez deserves some measure of respect because she's at least being open and honest about her agenda. She's not being honest about the facts surrounding guns, but she's at least being honest about what the goals are for her side, and that's mass gun confiscation. That's what they want. And obviously she doesn't know or care about the fact that 90%, over 90% of the guns that people own are semi-automatic, whether it be a handgun, an AR-15, or whatever other gun that you or someone you know may own. That's a semi-automatic weapon. It's, you know, 1 shot per pull of the trigger. That's what that is. But they don't care about that. They've never shot a weapon. They look at it and they see something that's black, something that's big, and it looks like a military weapon, but it's not. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter how many times you bring up the truth, how many times you bring up the facts. They don't want to hear it, and they certainly don't want to debate about it. I mean, you will never see these people debate open and honestly with people like Ben Shapiro, with students, the liberal students, debating with people like Kyle Kashuv about guns and freedom and liberty and the Second Amendment. You won't ever see that because they don't have the facts on their side. But just another example of liberal lunacy in this country. We'll be right back on the Blake Johnson program. We've got so much more to talk about. Don't go anywhere. So great news, everybody. It looks like North Korea has officially suspended their nuclear weapons program. Oh my gosh, and they've shut down the facilities. They are no longer going to make nuclear weapons. It's all over. We have now fixed North Korea. Oh, if only that were true. If only that were true. Now, I'm sure most of you, like me, possibly have some sort of measure of skepticism when it comes to this. I saw this on the news, and my first reaction was, yeah, okay, whatever. Let's see what else is in the news. I mean, that's how quickly I looked at it. I'm like, yeah, that's no. In fact, I posted on my social sites that they suspended their nuclear weapons program, and then underneath that I said, in other news, pigs are scheduled to fly out of my butt this weekend. got a few laughs out of that. Now, I can neither confirm nor deny that pigs flew out of my butt this weekend. It was painful. It was quite painful. But it was worth it. It was so worth it. Just so I could type up that status. I'm a prophet. I really am. I could predict that was going to happen, and it did not happen. But that's beside the point. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing with Kim Jong-un, can we get serious for just a second, is so ridiculous. I mean, look, I applaud the president for, trying to solve it with diplomacy, and what was it, Mike Pompeo, the FBI director, I believe? FBI or CIA director, I can't remember which one. He moved. These people move around so much. One day they're the director of some sort of department, and then they get moved to somewhere else because another person was fired, or so it's hard to keep track. But Mike Pompeo, I know that he talked to Kim Jong-un. I believe it was over Easter weekend, and that's where all this took place, I guess, and he decided he was going to do that. Kim Jong-un decided. But look, the truth of the matter is that these people do not listen to diplomacy. Their hatred for the United States is deep, and it's been that way for a long time. They slaughter innocent people. They indoctrinate their own civilians into thinking that the United States is the evil one, that we are the ones that just barged in and started terrorizing their country, when in fact it was the complete opposite. I mean, they didn't obviously come into our country, but they were terrorizing parts of the world. They were terrorizing South Korea. And then we had to step in, and we didn't truly solve it like we should have, but, I digress there. But still, Kim Jong-un, he is not a friend. North Korea is not a friend of the U.S., and I'm not just going to sit there and have us tell them what they're going to do with their own nuclear weapons that they've been working on for a long time, and say, oh, okay, yeah, we'll just stop that. No, that's not how it's going to work. Now, you could use sanctions, you can use the power from other countries to threaten them and say, you better not do this or else. But in reality, I believe Kim Jong-un is crazy enough that he's not going to listen to anybody in the end. Now, he is a bully. I'll give you that. He's a bully, and bullies tend to be cowards when you stand up to them. So, maybe you can delay it. But I think in the end, they're madmen. And all it takes is one snap. And they launch a missile, or they do something to kill their own people, mass amounts of their own people, and it causes the world to respond. That's what's going on. And I think this is just because you saw some of this during the Olympics as well. How North Korea was all of a sudden just being all giddy and all warm and welcoming to the South Koreans, and they've got their arms together. They're arm in arm with the South Koreans and the North Koreans, and they're united for this common cause of playing in the Olympics. And then, what was it, the sister of Kim Jong-un goes over to shake the hand of, the South Korean leader? Maybe it was the Japanese leader, I can't remember. But one of those Asian countries. And the media was just fawning over Kim Jong-un's sister and saying, she is the example of class and civility that Ivanka Trump, she just does not have. And, Trump is just a worse guy than Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un, I mean, he's not the best guy, but Trump, he's just evil. He's Satan. And then we come to find out that Kim Jong-un's sister helped him in starving and slaughtering their own people. You really think those people are they're just gonna roll over and suspend their nuclear weapon? No, they're not. Please, stop being dumb. So you've got that going on, and then this is pretty interesting. A challenger already to Donald Trump in the 2020 GOP primary. And he's a very famous conservative. This from The Blaze. Brad Thor, a best-selling author known for his thriller novels, announced his candidacy in several tweets over the weekend. He says he posts a picture of him. It looks like in a replica of the White House. I don't know if it was photoshopped or what, but he's standing with his back turned to the camera, and he's holding a hammer in his hand because his last name is Thor, so it's a play on Thor from the Marvel Comics. And he says in the tweet underneath the photo, "If no conservative steps up, I will absolutely challenge Donald Trump in 2020. America deserves better leadership." And then, about 5 minutes later, he says, "In fact, let's make it official. I'm in." So, according to this, it's official. I mean, it doesn't look like it's just him saying things. I mean, maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know. But this seems pretty darn official to me. He goes on, he was in an interview with the Daily Caller, in which he said, "The pages of history do not care if you were a farmer, a soldier, a doctor, or a butcher. They care whether or not, when called, if you rose up to serve. Our republic cries out for leadership, someone who will respect our constitutional norms and represent the world's greatest minority, the individual. That is who I'm running for." So, this looks pretty darn serious to me. He added that his biggest problem with Trump is that the president is mentally unfit for the White House. Thor told the Washington Times he doesn't yet have any official backing, but said he has lots of soft support. He told the outlet that he's been in an unofficial discussions with influential players in the conservative movement regarding a 2020 challenge since last year. He says, our nation was established to protect the greatest minority. Okay, I already said that. As such, our government's every move should be directed towards securing those rights. A free people should zealously guard their freedom and never take it for granted. A leader who neither understands nor cares about the mechanisms of government and the protections of liberty is unquestionably unfit to serve and should be voted out of office for the people's own good. So he's referring to Trump there. Now this is probably my favorite part of this story, and it's really short. They asked him, who would be his running mate? And he responded on Twitter by saying, it would be an incredible honor to run in any race with Ben Shapiro. Oh, dreams. Dreams can hopefully come true. Certain dreams. This would be one of those dreams that I would love to be a reality. Now, Brad Thor, some of you may not be too familiar with him. I mean, unless you listen to talk radio or you buy some of his books. I mean, he is a huge bestseller. Number one New York Times bestseller, I believe. But he's, like I said, he's known for his thrillers, and he's sold millions of books, millions of them. And he's one of the most well-known thriller authors out there. And he's a very prominent conservative as well. I remember during the primary of the presidential election, he was probably, oh gosh, at least in terms of his platform, how big his platform is, the most outspoken opponent of Donald Trump that I've heard. And he was very against Donald Trump, both during the primary and the general. Now, I don't know if he wound up voting for him or not. I don't know. I know he was a never-Trumper, but some people said that, and then they went around and voted for Trump eventually. But all I know is he is, and I've listened to him. Look him up yourself, find out for yourself, do your own homework. But Brad Thor is a very smart guy, and he is a true intellectual conservative. I mean, he's not. When you say intellectual conservative, I'm not saying he knows all the talking points and he's an establishment guy, and no, he's the real deal. And he's stood on his principles when everybody else was mocking him, tearing him apart. I mean, he's going to get all kinds of flack from people. And understand this, he's going to get flack. The only people he's going to get flack from, for right now, is going to be people on the right. From the Cult 45 people. And the Cult 45, that's a term that has been used by other people as well, but I think it's really great, so I will proudly use it on my own. But these are people who these aren't people who just voted for Trump. I mean, there are people who voted for Trump reluctantly, and I understand that. That's not what this is referring to. The Cult, C-U-L-T, 45 people, are those who followed Trump from the very beginning, are so obsessed with this guy, will defend him at every single move he makes, even if it's something so ridiculous like, hey, you've got to take away the guns first and worry about due process later. Well, you don't understand. He's playing four-dimensional chess here, guys. He's just saying this because he's got some great plan over here that's gonna trip up the left. So then you get more freedom. Those people are going to be infuriated. And maybe not just those people. I mean, there are those on the right who aren't quite that obsessed, but are still not necessarily obsessed with the person, but they're obsessed with a party. They're obsessed with a label. They're obsessed with the Republican Party, and quite frankly, they've infected the conservative movement because they've made it more about personalities. I mean, I guess in the end it's about personality, but whether it's Trump or somebody else that will eventually step in and take the stage, it becomes about them. It doesn't become about small government. It doesn't become about preserving and protecting the Constitution, understanding the Constitution, talking about the Constitution. It's just about what guy we can get in there to cause the most havoc. and piss off as many liberals as possible. That's what the conservative movement has basically turned into in many aspects of our culture. But if Brad Thor does indeed run, it's going to be hard for me to find somebody to support more than him. I'm a huge Brad Thor fan, so we'll see what happens. Definitely update you as this continues. But yeah, we haven't even gotten into the midterms yet, and we already have a challenger to the president. Now, here's the thing. I've said this before, and I'll say it again real quick. I do like some of the things that the president has said, even some of the things that he's done. But some of those things he's either rolled back, or he's flip-flopped on completely, or he's just flat out lied about. Donald Trump is not a conservative. He's never been. And I haven't reached the point where I could say I'd vote for him in 2020. And I certainly haven't reached the point where I would go back and vote for him in 2016. I mean, there's some very serious issues that are going on here. And a lot of things that people are praising him on are things that basically any Republican president would have done. You know, rolling back some massive EPA regulations, you know, passing that tax bill, which wasn't perfect, but was still, you know, tax cut. There you go. But then again, you have these things like infrastructure spending. You have the failures at the border and securing the border. You have him going back on his promises for, you know, being pro-life. I mean, they just gave $500 million to Planned Parenthood. I mean, seriously, how do you square that? So no, I'm definitely not in a position where I am all for Trump. Not by any means. Because that doesn't make it, I don't make it about personality. And it should never be about personality, regardless of whether you're a conservative or liberal. You should be supporting someone who is for the Constitution. It's just like with our Supreme Court justices. I don't care if they're liberal or conservative. I care, do they understand the law? Do they understand the Constitution? And are they going to make decisions that are based on what the Constitution says, not based on what they want it to say? And that's the problem. We're basing it on what we want to happen instead of what is tried, tested, and true. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Yeah. Can we please stop with the political correctness in this country? That's all I'm asking. Yet another story that is just driving me up the wall. And this happened over the weekend as well. Now, people can no longer have freedom of thought in America without being trashed. They can't say, well, you know, I might vote for this person, and I kind of like their no-nonsense style. And immediately you are attacked by millions of people, seemingly anyway. That's what the media makes it out to be. But Shania Twain, a country superstar, she is a Canadian, and she was being interviewed by The Guardian, and this was published yesterday. And the interview was over a wide range of topics. And at one point during the interview, she starts talking about her own conservatism when it comes to politics. And she had the audacity audacity to say that she would have voted for Donald Trump if she were a U.S. citizen. She said in the interview, quote, "I would have voted for him because even though he was offensive, he seemed honest. Do you want straight or polite? Not that you shouldn't be able to have both. If I were voting, I just don't want BS. I would have voted for a feeling that was transparent." Well, apparently being for transparency is so offensive when it comes to the left. Unless, of course, it's from their own people. Unless, of course, it's people like Jimmy Kimmel or Samantha Bee or, Michael Moore, then, yeah, they can be as transparent as they want to be. But God forbid someone on the right wants to vote for someone on the right. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Immediately she was torn apart on Twitter, and there was a social media outcry against her remarks, saying that she wasn't being inclusive and she was being offensive. And then, see, this is the part that gets me. It's one thing when you're attacked for your beliefs. I get it. In this day and age, everyone's going to be attacked for something, whether you're on the left or you're on the right. It's just the way it is with the social media age that we live in. I like to change it. I'm sure you'd like to change it. But too many people are obsessed and are obsessed with their own viewpoint that they can't handle something that might be different. It's one thing to have that, but then I cannot stand it when these same people, not those who are reacting to this, but those who are speaking out on their own beliefs, feel the need to apologize for them. Shania Twain, in response to the backlash, then goes on Twitter and posts a 4-page long rant about her apology. She says, "I would like to apologize to anybody I have offended in a recent interview with The Guardian relating to the American president. The question caught me off guard. As a Canadian, I regret answering this unexpected question without giving my response more context. I am passionately against discrimination of any kind and hope it's clear from the choices I have made and the people I stand with that I do not hold any common moral beliefs with the current president." Okay, let me just stop right there. Okay, first of all, going back to her response to this question, she seemed pretty thoughtful about it. She didn't seem like, well, I guess I might have voted for him. I mean, maybe no, she went into this detailed thing about, first of all, being more of a conservative in her own politics, and then saying that she liked Trump's no-nonsense attitude and how he was honest. And she liked his transparency. Okay, that's a feeling that a lot of people had. That's a big reason why many people voted for Trump. So it's not an uncommon belief, and she reasoned it out. So I'm sorry, but I don't believe her when she said that it was an unexpected question that she just didn't really think about that much. No, I think she did. She's just trying to play both sides to appease people, and that's an unfortunate part of the world we live in. When you're famous like that, you feel like you have to please everyone. And then she talks about, "I'm passionately against discrimination of any kind." Well, that's where I differ. Now, when it comes to discrimination based on race, based on gender, when it comes to, belittling people because of something that they can't change, that's one thing. But there are certain kinds of discrimination that aren't bad. I mean, and I don't mean like you're treating that person less than a human being. I just mean, there are certain types of discrimination that aren't racist, that aren't bigoted. It's just the way things are. But I don't think that's what she was talking about personally. She was probably saying, I think she was trying to make it out to be that the president is discriminating towards people and basically using the language of the left to make them feel at ease. But regardless, she then goes on to say that she doesn't have any common moral beliefs with the current president. Well, I mean, look, obviously the president has some very questionable moral stances on things, especially in the past, so I can understand that. Then she says, I was trying to explain in response to a question about the election that my limited understanding was that the president talked to a portion of America like an accessible person they could relate to, as he was not a politician. My answer was awkward, but certainly should not be taken as representative of my values, nor does it mean I endorse him. I make music to bring people together. My path will always be one of inclusivity, as my history shows. Well, let me let you in on something, Shania Twain. No matter how hard you try to be inclusive, you're never going to actually accomplish that. For one thing, the most obvious example of that is your music. Country music in general, not necessarily singling her out, but there are always going to be people that do not like her music, that don't like the kinds of, things she sings about, and just don't like it, so you can't bring them in. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard you try, whatever career you're in, whatever your viewpoints are, you are always going to be divisive. That doesn't mean it's your fault, it just means because people disagree, therefore there are going to be times where they divert away from your viewpoint, and there's nothing wrong with that. She has nothing to apologize for, nothing whatsoever. But you have these sorry people who can't handle a different viewpoint, and they just punish anyone, and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter to them. She can't just have her own viewpoint. And this is so sick. It really is. Now, here's another person who was being punished by social media because of something goofy that he did that people are just overreacting to and throwing a hissy fit about. So, a former NFL player, he posed in a picture after a prom photo with his daughter, also standing next to his daughter's prom date. A guy by the name of Jay Feely. He used to play in the NFL. And he posted a photo of his, on Twitter, of his daughter. And he was standing in between her and her date. And he was holding a handgun. He's holding a handgun next to him. And in the tweet he says, wishing my beautiful daughter and her date a great time at prom. #badboys. And obviously that offended a lot of people. Oh my goodness, because he was holding a gun. That means he might have actually shot that man. And oh my goodness, no one has ever heard of the common joke that dads make about their daughters going on dates, saying, how they have a shotgun ready, or they let the date know that they know how to use a gun. Just the common, gun references when it relates to a guy taking their daughter out on dates. No one has ever heard of that joke. No one has ever heard of that used before. Immediately what comes to mind is, oh my goodness, this guy, he is so insensitive. How could he possibly put a gun in a photo, especially after these recent shootings that have happened? He's so insensitive and evil. Now, some obviously recognize that it was just all in good fun. Okay, everyone is smiling in the photo. This isn't. It doesn't even look like he's terrified. It just, it's just a goofy photo. Well, then Jay Feely, after receiving a lot of backlash from this, he goes on and apologizes and said, the prom picture I posted was obviously intended to be a joke. My daughter has dated her boyfriend for over a year, and they knew I was joking. I take gun safety seriously. The gun was not loaded and had no clip in it. And I did not intend to be insensitive to that important issue. Oh, you know what? I have to say, there are times where I wish that I was famous just so I could do something like that. Just a joke that pisses off the left. Not that I'm trying necessarily. It's piss off the left. It just happens because it's so easy. And then I have a chance to respond, and I say, you know what? You guys, shut up. If you can't take a joke, get offline, get some fresh air. I mean, how I would love to tell these people to just cool it, and not offer an apology. These people have got to stop apologizing for things. This doesn't make anything better at all. It simply rewards their insensitivity. That's all it does. Now, moving on to another just goody two-shoes, warm, fuzzy feeling story. And I'm sure you already know about this. Starbucks. Oh, yes. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes talking about Starbucks and the backlash, the awful backlash that's been taking place against this Philadelphia store, Starbucks store, restaurant actually, for what happened. So you know the story, I know the story. Basically, two black people walk in to the store. They want to use the restroom. The worker there says, no, you have to buy something first. They, argue about it, bring out the manager. Manager says, no, you have to buy something first. And so then they just sit there and they don't do anything. They're sitting there waiting for a friend. And then the manager says, you either have to buy something or you have to leave. And they refuse to leave, so the manager calls the police. Police show up. They ask the two black men, I believe 3 times, you need to leave. And they don't leave, so then they arrest them and escort them out. That happens, and then a day or two later, the video that was taken of this incident, well, at least the short version of the video of what happened, goes viral. There's a backlash, and Starbucks responds by shutting down 8,000 of their stores, 8,000 of their restaurants, coincidentally, the day after Memorial Day, to, instead of, having their people come in and work, take sensitivity training for racial bias and make sure they're not saying or doing anything that could be construed as bigoted or racist. Even though there's not been a shred of evidence of racism from the manager, from anyone in any of those stores, even though there was nothing at all said about the person's race at all, and even though other people of different races have been denied access to the bathroom without buying something as well, the left still cries racism because narratives. It's just so stupid. I mean, look, forget about whether or not you think that calling the police was a bit of an overreaction. The fact is, from what I was looking at, from the manager's own testimony about it afterwards, the manager was saying that their store has a history of people just coming in, loitering, and just basically making a mess of their restaurant. But, to me, I don't think this is an overreaction. I mean, I can understand if there is a history of this going on, and if the customers were being, pretty pretty ridiculous, then I can understand that. And it is Philly. Philly has some, problems with crime. Problems with crime there. But this is just a ridiculous overreaction to this. And I saw this is just wonderful. I saw a story on the Babylon Bee, which, by the way, the Babylon Bee, I think should be read by every American, if for nothing else, just to take themselves a little less seriously. It's a Christian satirical news site. They take the popular stories and religious stories, and they turn them into satire and turn it into comedy. But they also point out some hard truths as well. There's plenty of stories they post that I'm like, is that satire though? Because it's funny, but there's some truth to that. So they reacted to the Starbucks story, and the headline says, Starbucks executives to undergo implicit bias training after implying all their employees are racist. Now, obviously this didn't happen, but this would be funny if it did. Shortly after the upcoming day of employee implicit bias training, during which Starbucks will close all of its more than 8,000 stores to educate its staff of 175,000 on unconscious prejudices they are fostering towards others, CEO Kevin Johnson confirmed that all company executives will be made to endure a subsequent full day of training to address the troubling bias evidenced by the fact that the required day of staff implicit bias training clearly implies that they think all of their employees are racist. And there's a fake quote that says, we as a company just implicitly accused all 175,000 of our employees of being prejudiced. This is problematic, and we are going to fix it. It's a funny story, but it's so true, though, because that's exactly what's happening. I mean, if you're going to close down all of those stores because of something like this, aren't you inherently assuming that all of your employees have some sort of bias that you have to fix? I mean, especially when you look at the context of Starbucks' policy and the fact that many of these stores, months before this one that just happened to go viral because, the customers, well, they weren't really customers because they weren't buying anything, but the two people that were in the store were black, so therefore it must be racist. But never mind that. Given the fact that before this one even went viral, many other people from many other different races were also treated the same way, but those stories never went viral. In fact, one of the people that was turned away from this very store in Philadelphia was a police officer. I don't recall the left ever throwing a fit about that. I don't recall the police officer or, the other people that were treated like this as well. I don't recall them calling for a boycott. I don't recall the left or the ACLU or whoever calling for a boycott of Starbucks then, because it didn't fit their narrative. No, they can't stand by the cops. They can't stand by white people. They can't do that. But obviously, if it's two black people, well, that must mean racism, which isn't in and of itself a racist thing to do. If you're assuming that the reason someone turns somebody away is because of their race without any evidence, that's kind of a racist thing to do, is it not? But what do I know? Alright, that's going to do it for the Blake Johnson program. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Try not to pay attention to the news too much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next Monday. Take care, and God bless.